What is up, guys? Phaedo82 coming at you with a retrospective video on Rust and on this channel in 2015, as well as a look at what's to come in 2016. First off, Happy New Year. Sorry for the lack of uploads in the past week and a half. I had to travel unexpectedly for the holidays, but I'm back home now, and the normal upload cycle will resume. Thanks to everyone for the support of the channel through watching, commenting, and sharing videos. This channel isn't even a year old. It was started actually in February of 2015, but it saw a tremendous amount of growth during the past calendar year. To everyone who supported the channel, thank you. Also thanks to Facepunch for doing what they do, thanks to Craig Pearson, the master wordsmith of the Rust community, and thanks to Ghost, Fuzz, and Boner in Sweatpants, the admins over on Rustopia who graciously allowed me to peer into the souls of players on Rustopia. There's no doubt that this channel saw a tremendous amount of growth from raid camps. I like to go back and take a look at some of that footage and do a commentary on it. I generally don't rewatch my videos after uploading them like most people. I don't like hearing my own voice, but it's going to be fun to rewatch this footage and to reflect on it. And this footage is actually from the first raid cam that was ever put together. Not a lot of people have actually watched this one. It was sort of one that flew under the radar. It was a silent raid cam. It was the first time that I ever used the free cam tool to go ahead and film something like this. And the genesis for using the free cam tool was actually, I was inspired by Boris the Blade and his cinematic Rust videos. It's very hard to coordinate people in Rust and have them do anything that could be scripted. So the cinematics, I just didn't have the patience for them. But I started using the free cam tool to look at players in sort of their natural environments on the server, and I found that I could line up shots and get sort of that cinematic feel that I really liked and was going for by using that free cam tool. The term raid cam was actually coined by Craig Pearson or by somebody at Rust, but it was put into one of the community updates, and then they were referred to as raid cams from that point forward. This one was really interesting. Initially, it was titled Racist Gets Raided. At the end here, you'll see that the homeowner here, he goes off on a bit of a tirade at the end, which could be considered racism. He messaged me on Steam after the video went up and demanded that I delete it, and I told him that I wouldn't, and then he thought his privacy was violated, and he was super butthurt. I told him, tough, deal with it. And I did change the title from Racist Gets Raided to The First Raid Cam, and I tried to bleep out what he was saying. But it was an interesting experiment, and again, the first time that I used that free cam tool to film a raid, and this is really where it all started for the raid cams.
Hey, I used to fuck your mother when I was 15 years old in Reynosa, Mexico, you bitch, and all of the rest of your mothers. Pinche puta. I hope the next president sends all you illegal motherfuckers back to South America. You ain't, man. Your house is down to the ground.
And this was the first raid cam footage that a lot of people saw. It was the first one to get featured on a community update, and it's called Raiders versus Spikes, I believe. And it was a group here of raiders who were kind of bullies on the server at that point in time, but they were going up against this base, and I started watching this with that free cam tool. I wasn't intending to even film anything, and then I hit film before I could even disable the HUD in it. But the beauty here is I started looking at this base, and I felt so bad for the people getting raided because their base was awful. I mean, it was positioned in a place where they had a window that was pretty much level with a rock, which is a horrible building idea. You could see straight into their tool cabinet, which you could easily destroy from outside of the building. They didn't have an airlock, so they had one door going straight into their base. All they had going for them was really the spikes, and the spikes do play a pivotal part in this raid here, as well as the inept raiders who really weren't able to sort of pull it off here, which which probably they should have been able to do with the resources they had. But this was right after these spike barricades were added back into the game, and you can see sort of the players kind of trying to grapple with that. They're trying to jump here into the window, and they're getting shredded by those spikes. I remember watching this and doing sort of more of a live type commentary with it, and I was trying not to laugh, but I was like gasping for air every time one of the raiders would hit the spikes, and it was just sort of somewhat voyeuristic, but somewhat maybe sadistic. I don't know, but it was just when that guy died right there in that part. I just remember you could hear me in the raid cam like laughing, and I was trying to like subdue my laughing, but it made me sound like a 68-year-old man with emphysema or something. But this raid cam was really one that, it's not a huge battle, but it didn't go as you would think it would go, because you would think these raiders would be able to get into a base like that no problem. But it was so fun to watch, and it was a small little slice of life on the server, but really just a good time, and one of the raid cams that I probably had some of the most fun with. And now we're moving on and taking a look at the Battle for Rustopia, which really has a special place in my mind in terms of the raid cams. And this raid was one that happened over on Rustopia, and it was a raid that started going on about 12 o'clock in the evening, or morning rather, so it was very late at night, early in the next morning. I started watching it, and it ended up lasting, I think, about, you know, an hour and a half, and then I had to cut the footage down and put it in a raid cam that I think was a little over 20 minutes. And it was a battle that I didn't expect to see something of this magnitude. I hadn't seen something like this in Rust before, so this was a first for me when I was filming it, and I was really wondering if the next day when I was able to piece the footage together, if it would make any sense, if it would translate what I was seeing with that free cam tool into a raid cam video. When I was watching this, it was the largest scale raid at that point that I had ever witnessed, and it was really more of a siege than a raid. I was impressed by the raiders building these structures and trying to take out those auxiliary cabinets there. And one of the coolest things here that I captured, which I'm so happy that I did, was these epic C4 jumps. You can notice here in a minute that this guy jumps off of this platform, and as he jumps, he throws C4 onto that tool cabinet that's suspended there, which was a glitch in the game at that point. You can't do that anymore with the suspended tool cabinets. But you'll notice as he jumps off here, it's almost like a move in a sports, footage or something. He jumps off and he just nails it with that C4. I remember seeing this and just like, not screaming to myself, but in my head I was like, what the fuck? I was just hoping that I caught it, and I'm so thankful that I did. So this raid cam was one that really blew my mind. It was the first one where my jaw sort of hit the floor. And I think it set the bar for raids, not for raid cams necessarily. It did for that also, I would say, in terms of my own raid cams. But it just set the bar for just this epic scale raid. I mean, it looks like something out of Star Wars when you look at the footage here. It's crazy. And I get a lot of positive feedback on this raid cam, and a lot of people told me that they started picking Rust back up after they watched this raid, or some people even bought the game for the first time, which is really awesome. Now, when 2015, when last year started, guys, up until about this point in time, a little bit before this, raiding was really stale in Rust. C4 wasn't in the game. It was tool raiding, and the mechanics for the way that the walls had health back then, and they would regen health. It was just, the raiding was not fun when last year began. And they made raiding fun again. Facepunch implemented the C4. They made it more of that visceral, intense experience which we expect from raiding. And then when I think this footage went live, it was raiding at a whole next level. Players started raiding again once the C4 was added back in, but then we started seeing more epic battles on larger population servers like Rustopia, like Rustified. Servers that have, high populations tend to really get some action that is a bit different than the smaller scale servers. I know that because I used to admin a smaller scale server, and the level of intensity on those bigger servers is really a different beast entirely, and that's sort of what you can see in this raid cam footage. But this shit was epic, guys, and I'm really proud of this one. Proud of them all, but I mean, this one was really just one in which I was new to Rustopia at that time, and I sort of met a lot of the people, a lot of the big players on the server at that point, and just had a really good time with it. Everybody didn't know I was watching, so when they saw this footage, they were really happy to be able to re-experience their raid. Also to study tactics from looking at that bird's eye perspective with the free cam tool. They were able to evaluate their tactics. They were able to look at the other team's tactics. And that was a really interesting thing that came about with all this raid cam footage as well. It was that it was a way for people to be able to relive their experience, but not only to relive it, but to rethink it. And to say, you know what, we should have done this. Maybe we'll do that next time. This raid cam had twists. It had turns. It had the initial raid that was starting off, and I thought for sure that base was going to get raided with the amount of raiders that were there. But then the defenders made this bold move. They went over and they C4'd the base early on in the raid, so they blew apart that staging base. And then ultimately they had some allies who came in, flanked that raid team, and then the defenders and the allies came together. They blew apart the staging base, or the raid base, the forward operating base, which you can see here. And this is really sort of some condensed footage. I would encourage you guys, if you're interested in that, to go back and check out that raid cam. Again, it's called the Battle for Rustopia. I'll put a link to it below to all these raids if you guys want to look at them more in depth. But this one was really the best raid cam up to that point that I did, and I still think it's probably the best one that I've done. It's just a beautiful testament to the players on Rustopia and to the players of Rust in general. It's not a Rustopia thing, it's a Rust thing. Now we're moving on and taking a look at my most popular raid cam, World War Rustopia. It just hit over 500,000 views as the year 2015 came to a close. This in some ways is the spiritual successor to the Battle for Rustopia. The same groups are at play, as well as some additional players here, but in the Battle for Rustopia you saw Dirt McGirt and allies attempting to raid the base of Tobias, Riot, and their crew. And in this one it's the opposite. You have Tobias, Riot, and their allies trying to raid the base of Dirt McGirt. Now what makes this raid cam so special, beyond the amount of resources and players that came together for a vanilla Rust raid, is that it had a really unique base, and one that doesn't exist in Rust anymore. But previous to Rust, now you could build on monuments in past iterations of the game, so you could build on top of the monuments, and that globe monument, the sphere, the Death Star, whatever it is that you call it, when it had its old textures, you could actually build on top of it. And in this case, you'll see that that base was very overpowered. You have a group of, multiple groups rather, which a total to about 40 raiders who are zerging this base, this compound over here, where the main base is on top of that sphere monument, and there's outer perimeter flank bases that are surrounding that. And this raid cam, beyond, you know, demonstrating a base that is super OP and that we weren't sure if it could be raided because of just how much of a natural advantage they had by building on top of that, really spoke to the need to build flank bases, those perimeter bases around your main base, to be able to sort of defend your base. And there's not many bases in Rust that could hold up to this amount of raiders and the amount of rockets and C4 that were used. So seeing this raid happen again was one where my mind was really blown, and I really was hoping what I was watching was going to translate and be able to be something that I could put into a video. Again, this raid was about 3 hours long all total, and I was able to condense it down into a half-hour raid cam, which is my longest running raid cam. But it was really an epic raid to watch, and it's something that is to this day really still a stunning example of what players in Rust can do. You know, they spent all week building this base, and then the raiders came and used all the resources they had and pulled it together just for this one raid. It was a really a hot point on the server when it was happening, and tensions are running hot. And these groups, I wouldn't say they hated each other. I think they had respect for one another, but there was just a lot riding on being able to raid this globe base. And if you guys go ahead and watch the raid cam in its entirety, I mean, at one point it really looked like that globe base was going to get raided. It pretty much, the first floor was breached and the base was about to go down, and then at the last minute, you know, resources were able to be used to patch it up, and the base withstood 40 raiders and hundreds of rockets and a hell of a lot of C4. So it was an epic raid cam, and again, something that was really magic, that was, you know, I was in the right place at the right time. And again, if people think any of this is scripted, go ahead and ask any of the people you've watched in these raid cams, and they'll tell you that, you know, nope, that wasn't scripted. We did a lot of hard work to be able to participate in that raid, and also we didn't even know Phaedo was there. But really, guys, thank you for all your support watching these raid cams. This one seems to be the favorite among a lot of people, and you know, I certainly can see why, and I'm really proud of it as well. At this point in the video, guys, I wanted to switch from talking about these past sort of highlights of the channel and talk about what Rust is going to look like in 2016. So Gary released a roadmap, which was in one of the past communications from FacePunch a couple weeks ago, in which he talked about Rust being a year in review and talking about some of the successes, and whether or not you started playing Rust early on in 2015 or late in 2015, a lot of things happened in 2015 that really propelled Rust into where it sort of needed to be. But in terms of where it's going, we don't really know, but with the roadmap, we can see that certain systems are going to be worked on. They're going to work on that metabolism system to make it more survival oriented, because they realize right now it's broken. They're going to work on an experience system, which has some type of currency associated with it where players gain sort of an experience value for harvesting resources, crafting items, doing things of that nature. There's going to be a level system which is based on the amount of experience that's earned, and you can actually level up to make new tiers of blueprints and different things available. Speaking of that, that blueprint system is going to receive a complete overhaul. And then there is going to be a skill system as well, which are going to actually have 3 different categories as the roadmap details. There's a survival category, a crafting category, and a fitness category. So like in that survival category, you can level things up to increase your regen speed, faster gather rates, higher yield from gathering. And then if you're crafting, you can reduce your crafting time, have a longer crafting queue, and actually create higher level items. So things like that, guys, are going to be really cool to see because you can actually specialize in different things. If you're a person who likes sitting inside your base and crafting while other members go out and fight and try to survive in the landscape, you can do that and use members sort of to the best of their ability. There's also a system that they talked about in the roadmap called cheer, which is sort of like a morale type system where your cheer will increase other players' skill levels around you, and that you can get this from objects and perhaps from other players as well. That's going to be really interesting to see. They talk more about reducing the grind in Rust, making it more fun, which is always something that we want to see in Rust. And they didn't talk a lot about PvE in that roadmap, but it's safe to say in 2016, I'm sure we'll see some PvE, at least early game to mid-game PvE threats in the game. And a lot of items will be added in, but the roadmap's a general framework and really talks about the systems that they're going to be working on. Now, guys, I just wanted to say too that this whole concept of alpha games, indie games, early access, not indie games, but early access or alpha is a relatively new concept for gaming. And it's going to be a process that is difficult for developers. As much as it is helpful, it's probably difficult to be getting constant feedback flooding in as you're trying to develop and build a game. I have no doubt that Facepunch is going to make Rust into an awesome game. It already is, but I just can't wait to see where it goes. The communications from Facepunch have been more serious lately, a little more sort of, I don't know if you want to say professional, but a little more focused and serious. Gary has a more serious tone with some of the things that he said. And, you know, he said in one of his past communications recently that to him, it's not about the money and that it's about making a quality product that he can show to his kid or his kids, because he apparently can't keep his dick in his pants, but to show to his kids. And that's going to be what his legacy is. Now, if you look at sales for Gary's mod or Rust, clearly Gary could retire. So I think he wants to finish the project. I think Facepunch wants to finish this project and make it as good as it can possibly be, but it's going to be insanely difficult sort of developing something as you're getting constant feedback. Can you imagine being an author and writing a book, and as you're writing every page getting feedback from people? That would be fucking maddening. So as much as I think it's awesome being an alpha tester and being part of this whole process, I just want us all to sort of take a moment and step back and realize that for developers, as much as it's very helpful, it's going to be overwhelming as well. But we're all on the same team, guys, whether we're a content creator, a developer, or a Rust player. Let's kind of all remember that sort of, you know, we're all here for the love of this game. It's going to end up turning into a great game. It already is a lot of fun. It's definitely worth $20. If you don't think it's worth $20, it's definitely worth the $10 that it's on sale for right now on Steam. So go ahead and pick it up. I hope to see you in game in 2016 if you're not in game in Rust right now. And what this channel will be like in 2016 is exactly what it's like right now. More Rust content, the weekly updates that I love doing, more base builds, more collaborations with other members from the content creator community. And when we see good raids, we'll do more raid cams as well. So as always, guys, thank you so much for the support. Phaedo82, peace.
Shut the fuck up. Alright, look. Do you guys know any history about medieval times? I'm not talking Lord of the Rings bullshit. Do you know true Anglo-Saxon versus French? Did anyone study that in college? Anyone?